So we continue so that we can come out of this region soon. Yes, we have come out from the life worlds. The mental worlds can be very captivating. It is why there is a difference between what is called in India as Panditya, that means book knowledge, scholarly knowledge, and true knowledge, wisdom, yoga. That's why there is yoga, because it's easy to read a book and interpret it. It's you have to realize there are truths in it which have to be realized. That's why we have Vedanta, which is the philosophical statement of truths, or rather intellectual statements of truths, which have been discovered through yoga. So they must go together. There cannot be just Vedanta without yoga. It'll be a, purely an interpretation which is just intellectual, and it won't be make much sense. It may trap, and there are so many commentaries like that on scriptures, and they also bind us and tie us. They make a very neat, fixed, systematic world because we want to see it like that. But our system may not be the way the divine has arranged the system. For example, we want to see in this world justice. So we have made a system that if you have done bad karmas in the past, you will suffer either in the present or in the future. And if you have done good karmas, supposing somebody you gave 100 rupees and he ran away with your 100 rupees, he will suffer and you will get it back somehow. 100 no, maybe 1000 you will get back. So it's very neat, too neat for divine freedom. And divine works in a different way. How if the divine sees that you will progress a lot more if that 100 rupees was pinched by someone, and that someone was pushed into this act, and the divine was the play because he wants you to grow in a certain way. Divine wisdom doesn't operate according to mental logic. We make a very neat and system world. It's comfortable. That's how religion works. But divine has his own way. Someone asked once why the grace came to Arjuna. We just read about cloistered paths and forbidden to walk. It's so strange. Divine grace came to Draupadi. She has married 5 husbands, and grace has come to her. It came to Tara. It came to Mandodari. Her husband is a demon king. It doesn't follow the mental logic that it has to come to some lady who is every day doing puja and homam and arti and diya. It has its own logic. It came to Arjuna and not to Yudhishthir. Yudhishthir was very erudite. He had read all the Shastras. That is why Krishna perhaps avoided. He will turn everything into a Shastra. Arjuna will just do the right thing. Krishna, you are telling me to fight? Okay, I'll fight. So, it has its own logic. But when mind works, what does it do? Life was consigned to a safe, level path. This is what we will hear when people want to take the spiritual life. Sri Aurobindo puts it beautifully in one of his letters, that in India, everybody reveres the spiritual man and the sannyasin. But nobody wants his own child to take to spiritual life or become a sannyasin. If the child wants to take to spiritual life, then they'll say, but what about us? We have brought you into this world. You are supposed to take care of us. Blatant ego. But it's not seen. All the scriptures go out of the window. Try to quote Gita. Gita says duty. Duty is above all. And Sri Aurobindo says Gita says nothing of that sort. Kartavyam karma. That kartavyam is determined by the divine, not by a mental, moral principle of life. So, life was confined to a safe level path. At one time, it was well known, people were afraid of sending their children to Pondicherry. Because they thought, if they come to Pondicherry, they will not go away. And there are amazing stories of children who ran away and came to Pondicherry. Our Parikshit Das, 17-year-old, somehow he came to know. he just ran away, managed the ticket, or probably not even the ticket, and somebody helped in those days, in train, without any booking, reservation, landed up here, and he was, I want to meet the mother and join ashram. So people looked at him, said, what? Go back. You can't come like this. You have to ask for permission. 17-year-old, no way, no chance. So he started crying. He doesn't know now what to do. He has come like this. Then Nalini is coming out and he looked at him. What happened? So he told the story. He gave the best answer. He said, I'll ask the mother and tell you. So then he's sweating. He asked the mother and mother said, okay, keep the child. Then she told him, but you must write to your father, get his permission. We see Amrita, we see Gangadharanji, same thing, 14, 15. They plunged into it like that. But mind will say, take to the safe level path. First you must ensure this. Then take to spiritual life. When it is 60 plus, we won't come in your way. Anyways, you won't be there to come in the way. Most likely. And if perchance you are alive, you will surely come in the way. Then you will say 60, another few years, you see, we are already applied. We are waiting for summons from the land of Yama. And see, you are growing spiritually. God is everywhere. All kinds of justification. So, safe level path. It dared not tempt the great and difficult heights, but the urge, this is where the role of the life force in yoga comes in. We cannot do yoga if the life force is weak. The vital, it can push people. Amal Kiran asked Sri Aurobindo, such an intellectual mind, brilliant. He asked Sri Aurobindo, author of 60 books, jokingly he would say, and somebody said, Sri Aurobindo must be a great yogi. Look, he has written so many volumes, 30 at that time. He said, in that case, I have written 60. Does it make me greater? So he asked once Sri Aurobindo, Lord, surely, I am sure it is my mind that has kept me to the yoga, because his vital was full of difficulties. Name it and he had it. And Sri Aurobindo gave a strange answer. No, on the contrary, it is your vital. The seat of difficulty was also his strength. And he says this, I had a penchant for falling. If I saw any good girl, I would fall. And he says, but my last fall was when I fell at the mother's feet. Because of this habit, I fell at mother's feet. Look at, what kind of... So vital to dare the impossible. This cannot come from mind. This has to come from the vital. Or tempt or skirt the danger, it dared not tempt the great and difficult heights, or climb to be neighbor to a lonely star, or skirt the danger of the precipice, or tempt the foam-curled breakers' perilous laugh. Breaker, the sea waves, foam-curled, dangerous. They tempt us. Sri Aurobindo writes in his beautiful poem, To the Sea. And he says, you think you are great. I know you can do this, you can do that. But I am going to come. I am coming. And I will rise on thy waves, holding them like a lion's mane. And then he says, oh, you will crush me, put me inside your depths. I will refuse to yield. I'll take your weight on my chest and be more stubborn than my fate. More stubborn than my fate. And then he writes, O sea, I come to measure my enormous self with thee. This needs the full gusto of life, to give and not bother. Adventures lyricist, dangers amateur. This is what the mind will not allow life to be. Or into her chamber call some flaming god, or leave the world's bounds and where no limits are. This is the urge of life. But the mind curbs it. No, don't do this. Make sure that first these things are done. Meet with the heart's passion the adorable, or set the world ablaze with the inner fire. That's what the other day about Nishikanto. What is there? I will have diseases, but I have come to the feet of Mahakali. And of course, he had his share of problems. There was nothing in the world which he could not eat or drink. So fond of eating. And with all his diabetes, handis of rasgulla. I love this story. He would take to lake, eat it and write poetries. And people complained to mother, mother? So mother called him, Nishikanto, I heard you were eating rasgullas in lake. Yes, mother. Aren't you afraid? Mother, I am Mahakali's child. You want me to be afraid? Okay, go. Has a paralytic stroke. Doctors have given up. Few more hours. Nishikanto this is what only the life impulse can do. Nishikanto says, just take me to the mother. He can't speak, so he makes gestures. On a stretcher he is brought, mother comes down. Yes, Nishikanto, what do you want? Just looks at her. Place your feet on my heart. She places her feet. Doctor said few hours. Nishikanto lives for 12 to 14 years. Recovering from everything. So this is another dimension, another way. Heart's flaming God. Give itself to the adorable. Mind will say, what am I going to get? Tell me if you go to Pondicherry. When people ask this way, okay, tell me what happens. When you join the ashram, do they give you a room? Is it this kind of room? What do you get a dining room immediately? That means one is not ready. As simple as that. You want to have everything and then come. On the contrary, come. Take the adventure. Be ready to sleep on the ocean bed. Or, who knows what she will arrange. This is another approach. There has to be something else, but I am just saying that what the heart can do. But life curbs it. A chastened epithet in the prose of life. She must fill with color just her sanctioned space. You are given this work, this duty, do this. Not break out of the cabin of the idea, nor trespass into rhythms too high or vast. The divine is measureless, fathomless. Who can say what he will do or not do? Who can confine him into this rule or that rule? Who can logicize? He has all methods and no methods, as Sri Aurobindo says. He can let the holy men keep chanting his name in the forest and not reveal to him, and quietly enter the hut of a poor old lady. All that he does is cleans the place, sweeps every day for 35 years, waiting for his Lord to come. And when he comes, he is so excited and thrilled that she plucks some of these fruits, plums, eats it first herself, and then passes to the Lord. And his brother says she is doing blasphemy. This is not done. How can she do it? How can she eat it first and pass to you? This is not done. We first give to God and then eat it. So Rama smiles. And Sabri says, I am sorry. I was overtaken with my joy. And I don't want you to taste sour fruits. That's why I taste them. Those which are sweet, I give it to you. I throw these sour ones away. Divine doesn't follow mental logic. He follows another logic, the logic of the heart. The mind can't do it. Duryodhana arranges all the red carpet treatment, nice palace for Krishna. But his motive is different. Krishna comes, sees, but says, no, I am going to have in Vidur's place. Poor lady, she is so thrilled. She makes some ordinary saks. He says, I have nothing much. I didn't know you are going to come here. He says, whatever you have, make it and I'll eat. And then when she is feeding, she doesn't realize that she is throwing the banana away and just leaving the peels. The stories, but very instructive. They instruct us into the ways of the heart. It's not that we have to do, and it cannot be done deliberately. It's that joy, that love. But the mind will put it, cabin it. Even when it soared into ideal air, thought's flight lost not itself in heaven's blue. It drew upon the skies a patterned flower of disciplined beauty and harmonic light. This is how mind operates. A temperate, vigilant spirit governed life with list of do's and don'ts. God was turned into a moral preceptor. Obey these rules, you are on the path of yoga. If you don't, not. And there are so many interesting stories of the mother with regard to that when people asked her. There is a story about a lady who started living with a man without marriage. Live-in, those days. People used to respect her a lot. It's there in a Collected Works, volume 10. So people used to respect her a lot, but the moment she did this, they turned away from her. Oh, this lady is like, pointing fingers. Oh, she's a bad lady, bad woman, this, that. And the story reached the mother. And what mother says? She says, when these things happen in the world, I understand, but when they happen here, I am shocked. What? Not the lady is living. When people judge by these social ideas, she says, I am shocked that they judge by these ideas. And then she says, and on top of it, to add one more stupidity to another, they will say, mother says this, mother says that. Mother's words. Go and check, page 79 to be precise. Because these are things which people won't believe. At the end, mother says, if you are still living in that social life, you are not ready even to take the first step on the path of yoga. She doesn't even talk about yoga. You are not ready even to take the first step on the path of yoga if you are still living according to these social ideas of life. Because it's a different world altogether. It's not a excuse for licentiousness, but it's to allow the freedom of the infinite which plays with us. Its acts were tools of the considering thought. There is no spontaneity. Thought must decide it should be like this and not like that. Too cold to take fire and set the world ablaze. I am reminded of a famous Urdu poet. So, there is a lot of talk there also about hell and heaven. You must dress like this, cover like this. If you hear music, you will go to hell. If you kill somebody, you will go to heaven. All kinds of weird rules. But I am not going into that. And people follow it. So there was a man whom they said, you should not worship an idol. You should not do this. You should not do that because otherwise you will go to hell. God will not be happy. So this Sufi mystic says, still the Urdu, then the English part, because it's got a flavor. He says, as Sheikh is the man who is worshipping, and the priest, high priest, as Sheikh, kya paega gulfishani karke? You are praying and you think you are going to find something great by this kind of a worship. You are just destroying your life. तू आतिशे दोजख से डराता है उन्हें. You are scaring me with fires of hell. You will be in hell. Says तू आतिशे दोजख is hell, आतिश is fire, से डराता है उन्हें जो आग को पी जाते हैं पानी करके. You are scaring me of fires of hell? Oh, I drink it every day as water. This is written by a mystic poet. It has a physical meaning, it has a subtle meaning. So there is, that is another approach. But this mind makes it cold. Too cold to take fire and set the world ablaze, or the careful reasons, diplomatic moves, testing the means to a prefigured end. Testing, trying. If I sat for meditation, what did I get? No, maybe I have to find another way of meditation. Let me ask somebody. How does experience come? Testing the means to a prefigured end. Prefigured is, if I sit in meditation, this will happen. If it doesn't happen, because God wants to play hide and seek, He enjoys it. He has always enjoyed it. But I do this, I get that. Calculated moves. or at the highest pitch some calm will's plan, or a strategy of some high command within to conquer the secret treasures of the gods, or win for a masked king some glorious world. Masked because you can never see beyond it. Not a reflex of the spontaneous self. So, it crushes all the deeper impulses of the heart. This kind of a mental rule. An index of the being and its moods. Now he is talking about the religions, what they have done. An index of the being and its moods. A winging of conscious spirit. A sacrament of life's communion with the still supreme, or its pure movement on the eternal's road. So, how does life commune with the Supreme? Where is his temple? The beautiful experience of Nishtha, Woodrow Wilson's daughter, Margaret Wilson. She was lying in a garden one day as a 15-year-old child. She was enjoying it. So, she had a strange thought. She said, God, I pity you. I wish you could enjoy this. And she has an experience of the Ishupanishad. She doesn't call it experience of the Ishupanishad, but she felt suddenly that the divine is enjoying it much more than I can do as a human. In fact, he alone is enjoying it. So she has that experience, Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam Yat Kincha Jagatyam Jagat Tena Taktena Bunjita Magrada Kasasudam. I alone am the enjoyer. She has that experience. A 15-year-old child lying down in a garden because there is a spontaneous aspiration. I wish you could enjoy it. To live with God with that spontaneity. But there is a rule which comes as a barrier in the way. There was someone who, Bulada had this, he could go any time and tell the mother, talk to her, because he was the last person. When mother's light would be off, then he will go to sleep because he is looking after the electricity. And he has to get up before the lights switched on. So he took it like, it's not that mother asked him to do like this, but he said, since I am the charge of electricity, if mother suddenly needs it, I must keep awake. And mother hardly slept. 2 to 4. So once somebody waked Bulada knocking at his gate. He was inside the ashram. My so-and-so has passed away. Can you please tell mother? Because he had the permission to go and see mother anytime. He said, okay. Next the man came. And he asked him as he was going to the mother, he said, did you tell the mother? He said, yes. I went then and there and told at the Samadhi. What? Samadhi? I told you to tell the mother. You can go. We trusted you. Poor Bulada. So he goes to meet mother. Mother, Yes, I know. Bula told me last night. She doesn't need to go there. She is everywhere if we live with this trust. Mother says that Sri Aurobindo is much more accessible now. You just go to the Samadhi, pray, tell him. She says that. So, but rules will come in the way. Or else, for the body of some high idea, a house was built with 2 close-fitting bricks. Action and thought cemented made a wall of small ideals limiting the soul. So we have the story of the man who was going in a church for 5 years, and suddenly he is told, from now on, there is a separate church for blacks. You can't come to this church. So his poor fellow has put his blood and tears into it. So he's thinking, I like this place, I have to go away. Suddenly Jesus appears in a vision before him. He says, my child, why are you unhappy? Oh, they have turned me out. He says, oh, rejoice. They have turned me out 5 years ago. We are in good company now. Close-fitting bricks. Trap God in a temple. Trap him in a mosque. Trap him in a church. He who is everywhere. Even meditation mused on a narrow seat. So people say, yeah, we are not religious. This is a modern trend. We are not religious. And they make a cult. Cult sectarianism is the same thing. So meditation mused upon a narrow seat. This is the way to meditate. There can be no other. My master is the only master. Only if you receive a mantra from him can you move towards God. Otherwise, excuse me, you have no hope. You are a lost soul. Exactly the same thing you hear in all religions. If you don't take initiation from my master, Sadguru, that's how the name goes. I mean, Sadguru now is a name for one master also. I don't mean offense for anyone. But I mean, Sadguru is also a generic term. Sadguru, meaning thereby he is the true Guru. By default, all other gurus whom we don't recognize are not Sadgurus. Be careful. You may be following a path, it will not lead you anywhere. My Guru, if he gives you the mantra, you have a chance. Meditation mused upon a narrow seat. And worship turned to an exclusive God. And now comes the master humor. To the universal in a chapel prayed. Or leaned to the bodiless impersonal. I remember in Patiala when we were there, and there were some people who were following the Sikh religion, great religion. Sri Aurobindo has appreciated Guru Nanak so highly and said it is the first attempt to form a spiritualized society. But look what happens with the followers. So, we used to go Mother Sri Aurobindo center and pray there, and oh, where do you go? So the lady, nice simple lady, you go there, acha, you pray there. Oh, no, we are taught that God is impersonal. So, I don't know whether we said or didn't say or just thought about it, that then why do you go there and kneel and read a holy book? If he is impersonal, you don't have to do that. So look at the touch of humor, universal, in a chapel prayed. Or leaned to the bodiless impersonal. Man cannot be satisfied. There is a need for the personal. Whose doors, to the universal in a chapel prayed, whose doors were shut against the universe. Sometimes it's hard to say who is fortunate, the outcast or the in. For God, where is in and out? Adventure of Consciousness, Satprem starts with a beautiful story. And this is a book, incidentally, Mother has said, has been dictated by Sri Aurobindo. Such a marvelous book. Except when he brought it out, added 15 pages after the mother's departure. I must say that, departure is the wrong word, but that changed the whole mood of the book. But otherwise, through and through, inspired by Sri Aurobindo, dictated by Sri Aurobindo, Mother says he's taking a keen interest in your book and he's very happy with it. So what does he start with that book? He starts with a small story. That once a king who was tyrant and believed he's the greatest, and he had a penchant for asking nutty questions and punish. So he asked someone, tell me who is greater, God or me? If you don't tell me the right answer, I'll cut you off. So the man, he says 24 hours. So man is terrified. So his son says, don't worry dad, I'll go and answer the king. He's a smart modern man, boy with gadgets. So he knows answers which dad doesn't know. So he comes, and when he asks, yes, you want to answer? Yes, of course. You know the punishment? Yes. Who is greater, God or me? So the child says, of course you. Yes, that is what I wanted to hear. Then he says, tell me, why, how do you say that? Because now he wants to hear more praise. He says, yes, I'll tell you, but first you say that your condition are fine, I have given the right answer, no punishment. He says, yes, your answer is right, so no more punishment. He says, okay, I'll tell you the logic behind it. There is something you can do which God can't do. Wonderful. See, they call him omnipotent. Tell me, child, you are such a loving child. I'll support your education, free education. Tell me, how do you say that? You are very intelligent, brilliant. Surely you must be studying in a convent. So, the boy says, see, king, if you are angry, you can banish somebody from your kingdom. God can't do it. Because his kingdom extends everywhere. Wonderful story. whose doors were shut against the universe. They prayed to the Universalist Chapel whose doors were shut against the universe. Only they will be saved who have entered here and been baptized. All these ways. Or kneel to the bodiless, impersonal, a mind shut to the cry and fire of love. Now, recently I was reading an article on Arya Samaj. Arya Samaj was one of those impersonal, divine power. Now it's a dying cult and people were concerned. So there was an article, there were very few followers. Even the old time Arya Samajis, now they are caught between. Sri Aurobindo has appreciated Swami Dayanand a lot, but it's just a first step. There's something crucial which is missing there. And that's what, he was a great rishi, that apart. The point is, how it can dry the heart. The problem there is that there is a need of the heart also to connect with the divine. But when you turn him into an intellectual system, a power which is impersonal, you can't do it. So there was a bhajan which used to be sung. Now look at the paradox. It is a bhajan. And it was a bhajan meant to refute and kind of mock at the devotees. Devotees will do kirtan and dance and say, I have put a tikka, tilak, chandan. So the bhajan is, tu hai nirlep Narayan. Kaha chandan lagao mein. You are, you don't have a body. How do I put a tikka to you? How do I worship you? Where are your feet? It was a mockery actually. It was a way to say that divine is universal. But again, look at it. It misses something else, that the universal can connect with you in a very personal way. They are not two different opposing truths. They are complementary truths. And that's what Sri Aurobindo is pointing at. On one side, universal in a chapel prayed. On the other side, he's saying that the heart was closed. The mind is shut to the cry and fire of love. A rational religion dried the heart. This is also a new thing. Rational religion. If God can ever be rational, He is supra-rational. He is not infra-rational, nor is He irrational. He has data beyond our senses, therefore He is supra-rational. It planned a smooth life's acts with ethics, rules. Rational religion. If you do this, this will happen. If you follow this way, you will meet God. Otherwise, you are a lost. People so easily proclaim, he is a lost soul. Sometimes it's so strange. Even to children, people have gone on to say, just if a child is naughty beyond measure, oh, he's a lost case. What do we know? Perhaps we are lost. And therefore we are thinking, transposing it in the child. What do we know? Sometimes those who have lost their way are closer to finding their way than those who are following their way according to certain frameworks. He is beyond all systems and rules and logic. It planned a smooth life's acts with ethics rule. Smooth life's acts. I have lived according to the rule book of God. God himself doesn't live according to that. That is the paradox. How he comes to whom? That is what Wali asked him. You are supposed to be upholder of dharma, and you kill me from behind the trees. You say that you love all, but Sugriv is dearer to you than me. What dharma is this? You are supposed to be equal-minded, samdarsi. But if you are equal-minded, you should have left both of us to tackle between ourselves. Why you intervened? I have no enmity with you. These are questions raised in the Ramayana. God doesn't follow that logic. He opens before Bali in his dying moments the truth of dharma. What is the subtle thing? It's not about blind act. It's about something else. The intention, the motive, the forces, the way one has lived all one's life, the need of the moment, the truth that is seen which must be done regardless of how and what. And Rama does it. And then Bali in his final moments understands. And then he says, thank you so much, because dharma is not a set of rules. Far from it. It is something very subtle. That's why in the Gita, Sri Krishna says, very difficult to know what is dharma, what is adharma, and what is karma and what is akarma, and even about dharma. It's something very subtle. One cannot know it just like that by ethical rules. Otherwise, one cannot understand the Mahabharata. One cannot understand why Buddha and Sri Aurobindo left their wives and came here, followed their path. People ask Sri Aurobindo, why do all these yogis have to leave their wives and come? They shouldn't have married. Sri Aurobindo gives a very witty reply. It could apply also to husbands for a change. So Sri Aurobindo says, you know what? When they got married, they had not taken to yoga. When they took to yoga, then they had to follow the norm of the yoga. Perfectly logical. They had to leave behind everything, and they left them perfectly logical. He uses the word perfectly logical. It's the logic of yoga they have to follow, not the logic of the world. Dharma. But people will say it is a dharma. How can you leave your own? If you ask a spiritual person, he'll say, oh, your own. Once somebody told to Champak Lalji, my friend. Champak Lalji, oh, your friend. There was a world of questions within it. Your friend. Friend is the divine. And there's things in the world, of course. Or offered a cold and flameless sacrifice. That's where you have a fire burning and everything is going on. In between also what is going on is the child is crying, please see, oh, so and so has come, tell him to sit in the dining room. I am just coming. Now the mind is begun to work. Why has he come? But mantras and cold and flameless sacrifice. And now comes another beautiful humor. The sacred book lay on its sanctified desk, wrapped in interpretations, silken strings. A credo sealed up its spiritual sense. Credo. Interpretation. What is interpretation? Oh, this is the word, it means this. No, according to dictionary, according to so-and-so's lecture, it is this. According to another book, it is this. But that's credo. And somebody asked Swami Vivekananda, and Sri Aurobindo quotes this. But Shankaracharya does not say this, what you are saying about Vedanta. Where is written? So he expected Swami Vivekananda will rattle out few slokas, and Swami Vivekananda gave a very simple answer. He says, but I, Vivekananda, says so. That's the end of the story. But I, Vivekananda, says so. And Sri Aurobindo quotes it. He says, he had a point. It may sound like an arrogant, egoistic thing, but he has to use the word I. He has experienced the truth. He's not interpreting a book. He's revealing a truth. There is a difference between interpreting and revelation. Here was a quiet country of fixed mind. Here, life no more was all, nor passion's voice. The cry of sense had sunk into a hush. Soul was not there, nor spirit, but mind alone. Mind claimed to be the spirit and the soul. And Sri Aurobindo points out the big mistake in modern psychology, that it mixes up the mind with the soul. It says mind, its soul is basically mind only. It's just that, they use the word soul. Basically it's mind. Even you'll see talks on, they used to say soul, they were great yogis. Basically they meant mind. Now we know it. Modern psychology knows it. So this is the mind which turns everything. Lost itself in the glory of the thought, a light that made invisible the sun. God doesn't really exist. There's seeing God. Who can see God? He's formless. You can't see God. Sun is invisible. It's a metaphor. It's a way of saying that Arjuna saw Krishna. It's a symbol that, God is everywhere. So the poet created a symbol. Or the other people will say, no, there was television those days. That's how sense. Look how advanced they were. Scientific. Actually all nonsense. One can see God. That is what was Vivekananda's question to Sri Ramakrishna. Have you seen God? Yes. Can you show it to me? Yes. So, a light that made invisible the sun. Look at the paradox. And that's why when people compare Sri Aurobindo to thinkers, they are doing a great disservice to the thinker and to Sri Aurobindo. Thinker has its own domain. He may use words which are similar to a yogi's. It's a borrowed light, like the moon's light. It's comparing moonlight and sunlight. A yogi moves in a different domain. He also uses thought. But for him, thought is only a medium of expression. He is not bound or chained by the thought. He can contradict himself. People ask him. And Sri Aurobindo says, why hasn't Walt Whitman said, I contradict myself, I contain multitudes. This is his way of saying. Because truth is not a fixed, rigid thought. Into a firm and settled space she came, where all was still and all things kept their place. Each found what it had sought and knew its aim. This is the big danger of intellectual knowledge, that one may think I know. One may have read everything about the eternal, yet one may not know the eternal at all. Synthesis of yoga. So, intellectual knowledge is not knowledge. It's not Jnana Yoga that one has read many books. Sri Ramakrishna didn't read a single book, and Sri Aurobindo says, it is fortunate, he was lucky not to have read the modern books and not being corrupted by the Western mind. Sri Aurobindo says that he was lucky that he didn't have a modern mind. Otherwise, he would have questioned everything and got into a maze and quagmire. And that's why he could go straight to truth. All had a final last stability. There one stood forth who bore authority on an important brow and held a rod, like a priest, knowledgeable man, Pandit. Pandits must have these marks, no? So that you know from a distance he's a Pandit. Don't mess with him. He doesn't say that. In front, in his chadar, it is written Ram Ram Ram. Behind, you know what is written? Don't mess with me. Don't try to, take me lightly. I am a Pandit, priest. When I walk into a house, wash my feet, at least touch them. Give me a nice place to sit. I am the authority of the scriptures. So there is one like that. On an important brow and held a rod, command was incarnate in his gesture and tone. Traditions, petrified wisdom, carved his speech. Petrified wisdom. This truth has no living reality. He had read a book, spoke the same things 100 times over and over again. There's no spontaneous revelation in that knowledge. So that's how petrified wisdom. His sentences savored the oracle. And what does he say? There's a lot of humor. We'll read with this. Stop with this passage. Traveler or pilgrim of the inner world, fortunate art thou to reach our brilliant air, flaming with thought's supreme finality. O aspirant to the perfect way of life, here find it, rest from search and live at peace. You have found it. You speak so well. This is it. Join us. We'll give you a free membership card of the Club of the Elite. You are a member of the Elite Club. That's what he tells her. Ours is the home of cosmic certainty. There is no certainty in creation. That's the joy and the wonder of creation. There is no cause and effect in the last analysis. It's an unfolding of delight. If everything is certain, there would be no newness. And each moment creation is newborn. Uncertainty is a boon of creation. It comes because behind it there is infinite. If things are certain, they are fixed. And if they are fixed, they cannot change. That is the deeper meaning of anityam. It's a boon. It's not a curse. People are scared of it. But he says, no, there is cosmic certainty. If you do this that way. We have read all the scriptures. Ours is the home of cosmic certainty. Here is the truth. God's harmony is here. Register thy name in the book of the elite. We'll include you in our list of speakers now. Register thy name in the book of the elite. You're an elite. Admitted by the sanction of the few. Adopt thy station of knowledge, thy post in mind, thy ticket of order draw in life's bureau. So now you have got the right. And praise thy fate that made thee one of ours. Old time, see acharyas, so much ego. Teachers, so much ego. You ask them a question and they almost, how dare you ask me a question? Sometimes people when they tell me, it's a very silly question, so I have to tell them, no question is silly, answers are silly. So let me apologize beforehand because my answer may be silly. Questions are never silly. But I have seen speakers get so angry. Oh, you have not read this book. You are saying because you have not read Mother and Sri Aurobindo. Ask a question and see the reply. I am an authority. How dare you question it? Look at Sri Aurobindo, how he would sit in evening talks and people would all ask kind of things. And his answers here and there so beautifully. All here, docketed and tied, the mind can know. All schemed by law that God permits to life. We know all the laws. 4-5 lines more. This is the end and there is no beyond. Here is the safety of the ultimate wall. Don't cross it, all measures will fall away. But they don't say that. And indeed, this is true. The touch of the infinite can shatter all measures of life and mind and rules and systems and theories and philosophies. It can be disorienting. You see, don't go beyond it. Here is the clarity of the sword of light. Here is the victory of a single truth. That's how sects and cults are formed. Here burns the diamond of flawless bliss. A favorite of heaven and nature live. These are windows through which we glimpse. Living inside the mind, from that we glimpse. And we make a system out of everything. You see, when Krishnamurti said, truth has no path. So people made even a system out of it. Few days back somebody was quoting me. Truth has no path. I said, yes, obviously. But it can walk on all paths. There is a complementary truth. But one. When you take one part, and it was evident in his own life. He said there is no teacher needed and he became a teacher. It's true. Truth has no path. It's pathless because it's infinite. There is no path. But it must be understood with a complementary truth. Therefore, everyone has his own unique path. If you don't put this complementary truth, then it will be like, anything that I do is path. It doesn't mean that. Mother gives a beautiful story about this. That how people were, she sees that there is a room in which there are windows through which people are seeing strips of sky and calling it truth. And each one is telling her, oh, I see this, I see this. I say, okay. Then somebody else reports all the religions and sects and cults and paths. Then she says, it doesn't interest me. It's a very partial saying. Then there is a man sitting out in the open and he is simply eating something. He is leaning against a tree and he is in purple robes. And he says, please come and taste my dish also. And she says, all right. So mother tastes it and says, aha, yes, this is indeed something genuine. This is good, it tastes good. And then she asks him, what is your path? Because everybody is telling their path. He says, I have no path. Mother quotes this experience of hers in the agenda. Now, it doesn't mean I have no path means life's unruliness. He had followed a journey which was not bound or tied to any fixed rules, but it was his fire. And she ends by saying something very interesting in the agenda itself. My child, if you ask me for a rule, there are only 2 rules. One, do not cling. Do not cling to anything. Any idea, thoughts, opinions, viewpoints, experience, etc., etc. Do not cling. Many things will come in the way. Don't take them as they are premature certitudes. Observe them, pass. Do not cling. And then she says, but more importantly, carry this thirst. Thirst for something that you call as light, something called love, something called perfection. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. This thirst for that light, that love that one needs for perfection. And then she ends up with a very powerful thing. She says, and if you have that thirst, then even the extravagances of an American youth are a path. We'll stop here.